Opening slide graphic text title. Session 4, Doing a Good Job of Getting a Good Job. Part 1, Business Needs Analysis with Milton Tyree. Logos, Belonging Matters, and TalksThatMatter.net.
So let's explore what we call customized employment. And MG&A, along with a number of other organizations in the USA, we've reached a common agreement. It really was, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to this slide. It really was Mike Callahan who was really restless with this job carving stuff. And he thought, we're always asking employers to negotiate and to leave out part of other jobs. And so he said it's not that that's a bad thing to do, because they're jobs that are a good fit for the company and a good fit for the individual. But it's a little unbalanced. It's like what we're asking for is more heavily weighted in favor of the employee than it is for the company. And so this was his idea. He said, how about if we look at the job candidate side of the equation, and we say that what we're looking for here is what we've learned in discovery. And you know what those things are? Conditions. What's next? Interests. Contributions, right? So that's on the employee side, and we learned that through discovery. Then on the business side, said here are some ideas of what we can do here. We can look at addressing unmet needs in the business. We can look at tasks that enhance the business that are a good fit for the person we're representing. And we can look at tasks better performed by others. So here's the formula here. Conditions for success, interest for employment, and potential contributions we've already discussed. So let me define the unmet workplace needs. This really relies on looking at things that aren't happening the way they need to happen within a business. And every business has these. So there are a couple of dimensions. It's kind of like in discovery. You're wanting to arrange time in the business to see what's happening there. So you might see unmet needs. But it's also fine to ask the employer, are there things that you need to get done that aren't getting done the way you need to have them done? And most businesses will say, well, yes, they are. Now, if that's true, you need to go back to the person's conditions, interest, and contributions. You're not just looking at tasks that aren't getting done. You're looking for tasks that aren't getting done that would be a fit for the person you're representing. Same thing with tasks better performed by others. We need to be careful about this because it does deal, at least partly, with paying less for a task. But this is how we think about it. You have somebody in a business who's a highly credentialed, highly paid person you see doing tasks that would be a good fit for the person you're representing in terms of their conditions, interest, and contributions. And you just propose, would it be helpful to you if the person I'm representing did these tasks that you do every day that would free you up to do more things that are consistent with your experience and your credentials? And so people get paid at least minimum wage, but a good entry-level wage for what those tasks would be. We call that tasks better performed by others. And then the third thing that we look for are tasks of specific benefit to the business. And on this one, I just really always think about it as you learn with some people in discovery that they just have this really extraordinary talent or interest in some area. And you look at the business and you think, wow, is that part of the job ever what they would be born to do? Or you might see something to suggest that the business add as some tasks that would really be good for the person you're representing. And so that's tasks of specific benefit to the business. So this process of determining this is what we call an employer needs benefits analysis. And we would say the advantages of doing this is that it helps employers look at their business differently through new eyes. It helps identify tasks that meet the conditions, interests, and contributions of the job seeker. It allows us to better understand the setting, the culture, and demands of the workplace, and it gives employers a concrete document, which would be a customized job description or the employer needs benefits analysis. So these you can download also, the employer needs benefits analysis and customized job description from markgold.com. So after the way we teach this, you look at making an initial contact with an employer and you present what we call a concept portfolio that describes customized employment. You present a visual resume of the job seeker. And if they say, yeah, come spend some time and see what you can find, this is what's conducted. And if you find a fit, then that's where you look at negotiating a job of mutual benefit. We do not care about competition. We live in a hyper-competitive world, sure enough. Everything is a competition. We're interested in contribution, and we believe that everybody has something unique to contribute, including people who are not going to compete very well for employment. So let me give you some examples of the scales here. I should add at the top, there are 3 areas of businesses that we focus particularly on, looking for unmet needs, tasks better performed by others, and tasks that enhance the business. And that is, we look at what other employees are doing, we look at the work setting, and we look at customers. So here are some examples. This is a high school work experience example. We would call it work transition, but I changed it to work experience here. So Corey was a young man that Donna, the employment person from the school, was looking for a work experience job for after discovery. And one of the big things that Corey had to contribute, if you think of our list of contributions, he was really strong in the second one in terms of personality. It was important for him to work someplace where his personality was appreciated, because he was one of these guys, just never met a stranger, knows the gift of gab, and really engaging with people. So it's not so much a skill as a personality characteristic, but it was a big part of thinking about work for him. In terms of his skills, one of his really big skills was driving this power chair. I always say that if there were a wheelchair motocross, Corey would be in that competition because he was really good at getting around in the chair. Now here's the scenario. This is not textbook. Sometimes things aren't textbook. Here Donna was. She was not at Walmart making an employment call for Corey. She was at Walmart doing a return. And when she was at the return counter at Walmart, she looked at the cubbies in back where all the return stuff goes, and they were overflowing with stuff. Not only that, there were carts that were pulled up in front of the cubbies that also were overflowing with stuff. And she made a comment to the woman giving her her cash back for her return. And she said, "That looks like you're a little bit behind over there." And she said, "Yeah, we are. It's like stuff always gets stacked up back here." And so Donna said, "Well, whose job is it to take that where it needs to go?" And she said, "The department managers. The department managers are supposed to come up and get the stuff like from automotive and household and gardening and take it back to their departments and put it on the shelves. But they never make it up here. They're too busy or, eating chocolates or smoking or something. I don't know, but they're not coming up here and getting the stuff." Ta-da! Unmet need, right? And potentially a good job for Corey, in that Walmart could be really interested in hiring somebody with his social skills, and with a cart behind his wheelchair, they could just put all the stuff from household in there. He could run back to household and get the stuff put back on the shelves. So she proposed that to the manager, and the manager said, "Great." Now, so let's look at the ask. Let's look at how this is a different ask. You might think, well, that was job carving. Corey's doing part of the department manager's job. You might even think it's a task better performed by others because a department manager is going to be paid more than an entry-level employee. But I think of it as an unmet need because of the ask. You see, because Donna didn't go into the manager and say, "Can you show me the department manager's job description?" And then she would look at it and say, I know somebody who could do this, take stuff back to the floor. No. She went to solve a problem that she noticed the company was having. When she met with the manager, she said, "I was here shopping on the weekend and I saw all this stuff stacked up. Would it be helpful to hire somebody to get that back to the departments?" She didn't make any reference to what she knew about that. And the manager said, "Oh my goodness, talk to me. That would be great," you see. So the ask is, I have somebody who I think could solve this problem for you, and you have this problem. So it's more of a balanced equation. Do you see the distinction? And so I took this picture of Corey, and I also watched him return stuff. And so sure enough, he would talk to people and take stuff back to the department. And sometimes there would be an employee there, which was the idea to unload the cart. But I saw him ask a customer once too. I didn't report that, but I thought, well, he got the stuff back on the shelf, and hey, would you mind putting those oil filters over there with the other ones, And oh, sure, no, as you all would say, no worries. Yeah, we can do that. So that's an example of an unmet need focused on the work setting. All right, this is the Mallory story. I look at this as an unmet need focused on customers. And this is because Sandy, the same Sandy who helped Tom find his job and Jean find her job, was assisting Mallory. So one of the things you need to know about Sandy is an everybody can work person. Some people are made like that, and she is like anybody, work when we looked at the, having access to the good things of life and work is one of those. Sandy believes that to the core. And so Mallory was somebody who needed a lot of consideration around work, but she was looking at child care centers. Remember, Mallory was interested in working with children, and she asked, are there things that aren't getting done here that need to get done? She blatantly looked for unmet needs. And one of the things this child care center said, it's called Sandy's Preschool, but it's a different Sandy than the Sandy who was talking to them. They said that one of the things the kids really need is being read to, and it'd be nice if they had more of that. And so, how about Miss Mallory coming to read to the kids a few times a week? Would that be helpful? And it was helpful, and as I said earlier, I think it was helpful in many ways to those kids, in addition to getting read to, in terms of having a teacher who had significant impact of disability. And so it was an unmet need. They named it as an unmet need. Would it be helpful to have somebody come read then? Yes, it would. And she negotiated the job for Mallory. She didn't carve the job from what teachers were doing. She found a need that the company had and proposed it. Do you get the idea how this works? It's in the ask. It's a different ask. You need this. I have somebody who can do this. Let's put both of them together. Here's another example. We saw Gabby earlier. Actually, this photo of her on the left is for another company. She worked for a company called Eventualities. And Eventualities, she had a customized job there, and her job, it's a company that did setup, like for big weddings and parties and stuff like that, and they would rent the silver and the china and the tablecloths and the tables and the tents, anything you wanted. And one of the things that Gabby helped them with, she had a real eye for digital art and stuff like that, and so she helped take pictures of stuff and set up a catalog for doing it. And I should mention that Gabby was in a day program after she got out of school. So this was quite a different kind of lifestyle for her, working at Eventualities. We had this thing happen in 2020 called COVID, and people quit having parties and weddings, and this multi-generational family business went out of business. And Gabby lost her job along with everybody else there. Now, one of the things about Gabby that had been learned in Discovery was that she really liked doing digital content kinds of stuff. But the initial expression of that was they learned, or Mary Read learned, who was doing Discovery with Gabby, that anytime there was a family gathering, that Gabby would take pictures and put together a slideshow of it. And she looked at other kinds of things like that Gabby enjoyed doing. Not necessarily marketable, but certainly around an interest. So one of the things that they did together was they took a couple classes at the community college on digital content. Learned some software where, she dug into that a little bit to learn about it. And then when Mary Read met Christy, who owns Eagle Eye Strategies, a PR company, at the Chamber of Commerce, and she was talking to her about Gabby, somebody, who might be able to help with her business. And this is interesting. When she was talking to Christy, Christy said, "Did Gabby used to work for Eventualities? Because they were one of my clients." And she said, "Yes, same woman." And so she spent time then studying with Christy what she did in her job. And she saw some digital content things that Gabby would be good at doing that the owner of the company then wouldn't need to do and could spend time building her business. So that was the ask. She knew Gabby, and that it was set up for her to come in and look at the kinds of things she was doing. She said, "Yeah, Gabby could do this, this, and this. Would that be helpful to you?" And she said, "Yes." So this is an example of a task better performed by others, because Gabby was paid a fair wage, well over minimum wage, for doing that, but certainly not the same thing that the owner of the company would have been making in the same hours for doing it. Task better performed by others. I'm going to show you one more example, and David, this is where I have the video clip I'm going to show. This is an example because I think it covers all three bases. And it's kind of an interesting story. This man, Michael, had a work transition job at Dairy Queen. And so somebody in Sydney asked me what Dairy Queen was. So it's a fast food place like a Hungry Jack's or McDonald's. But they sell ice cream, soft ice cream. And they have one thing there that y'all should have here, and it's called a blizzard. And what a blizzard is, for all the world, it's a vanilla milkshake, but you can pick any kind of candy you want, like a Reese's cup, and they grind it up and mix it in with the vanilla ice cream. It is to die for. It's almost as good as Tim Tams, which is almost enough to make me move to Australia. So anyhow, you could have a Tim Tam. You could have a Tim Tam blizzard. Yes. Oh my gosh, just thinking about it, I want to go get one right now. It's kind of like it, but it is the same idea, but it's not as good. It is not as good as a blizzard. And so anyhow, when you're in the U.S., just be sure you go to a Dairy Queen. Well, Michael got one of these plug-in jobs like I had done for Tim at the Dairy Queen. They just put him there, right? It was a placement. They had an agreement with Dairy Queen that they would take a student, just like with Tim. So, I can't be throwing rocks here. They were doing the same thing that I did. And it also didn't work. It wasn't something Michael was interested in doing or good at doing. He was a lobby attendant, which means throws people's trash away when they don't do it, He didn't like that. Michael liked everything to be just so very orderly, and he didn't like people messing up what he had just done. He also really needed a mature workforce, like good model workers, and he was he was a teenager, he was really interested in young women. He had really immature teenage co-workers who exploited him. And they would say things like, "You see that girl over there? She's interested in you," And he got fired, from Dairy Queen. To the credit of the company, it was actually, this is unusual in the U.S., but the same group that assisted people with adult jobs also was doing the work transition jobs. And to their credit, they took the blame and they apologized. They said, "We're sorry, we threw you in there." And he was just getting out of school. So they said, "Let's work with you and figure out what kind of job would make sense for you." So they worked with Michael in Discovery, and they came up with this job at Trustwall. And so I'm going to play a little clip that describes it, and then we'll go through how this relates to unmet need, task better performed by others, and task of particular benefit to the business. Now, I put on the left-hand side here, I'm going to give you some quotes, the things that the men are saying, because this is a Western Kentucky business, and if you think my accent is bad, you probably will not understand what they're saying. You might, but I'll do some pull quotes here. Here we go.
My name is Michael Erickson. I'm an employee in Trustwell, and I do the punch grinder, and I've been working here for almost 4 years. And
we hired Michael here, and we started out grinding punches by hand over here on the other grinders. Started, and we used to have to change over for him and do all the changeover. Now he changes them over by himself and does them just as good as anybody else. Correct. And I check once, twice a day on him, and he's just as perfect as anybody else is. He does a real good job.
Michael just loves it. It's his job. He don't want anybody else doing it. And he's learned how to do it better than anybody else. And we've come to where we trust and rely on him to do it. We had the tool and die makers come in, and they set this up. They played with it for a while before we hired Michael, and of course they trained Michael how to set it up and how to run it. We bought the machine just before we hired Michael.
Okay.
But before we bought this machine, we did it by hand with a grinder, and it was slow. We did 2 punches at a time, but we had a lot of setups.
All right, so this last thing that Bob said is the definition of customized employment. It made good sense to hire Michael. It was good for him, and it was good for us. So let's unpack this a little bit. So this is how this job transpired. You know, the job supporter was looking for work, looking for tasks for Michael that required a real eye for detail, that were in a company where there would be a mature workforce, where, you know, Michael could see men interacting positively with women and know what that's all about. And, you know, some place that would use his, he was kind of looking for a masculine kind of place to work, or, you know, some, you know, more tool kinds of tasks, that kind of stuff. He worked with men and women here, actually, both. And so the person was at Trustwell looking for this, and one of the things she noticed was that the welders were leaving their welding stations and going over to grind punches in the manufacture of big prefabricated metal trusses, I think is what they did. And so they sometimes they were off. And as Johnny mentioned, they did get this new machine that was going to be more accurate in grinding them, but it still took setup and that kind of stuff to get just the punch you need. So one of the things that the job analyst was thinking about, the job support person, was, well, this is pulling welders from their welding job, which requires a certain credential and certification and pay. But this other task, when she had them show her that, didn't require any of that. It didn't require any credentials. You know, they could just, it was something that would be trained on the job. So she thought, task better performed by others. You know, you don't have to pay him the higher wage that you would pay a welder to do it. Also, it was an unmet need in the way that the welders weren't always getting it right, and they were having to go back and have them redone. And it was a task that enhanced the business because it was just like one of those things that was made for Michael. You know, it just had so many components that he'd be really good at. And so she didn't go in and say, look at the welder's job description and say, could I take part of this? Would you hire somebody just to do this part of the job description? No, she said, I've noticed this work needing to be redone, and I have somebody who has a real eye for detail. I think you have the nature of a business where he could really contribute and fit in. Would you be interested in considering him? And they were, and he was hired. So I think it's focus on employees, but it kind of ticked all three boxes there.
Closing slide, graphic text. With thanks to Milton Tyree, Mark Gold & Associates, www.markgold.com, livestream, www.beinteractive.com.au. This video was made possible with the support of an Information and Capacity Building grant through the Department of Social Services, produced by Belonging Matters. Belonging Matters makes every effort to provide accurate and up-to-date material. However, information is subject to change and our materials for reference only. This video was filmed on the land of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Logos, Belonging Matters, and TalksThatMatter.net.